Hello and welcome to the second video in the Online Forms video training series. In this video we're going to look at how to build an online form and maintain one. So we'll start with a quick refresher on the components of the online form. Sections will be used to group questions together for appearance and readability. And sections are optional. You don't have to have any sections on the form. If you have a short form you probably won't have sections at all. Acknowledgements are to put either checkboxes on the form for somebody accepting terms and conditions or something like that, or to just create a rich HTML component of the form and use that to put things like pictures or larger text or whatever. And you can have as many acknowledgements on the form as you like. And the third and most important component is the questions, which are the actual things that you're going to be asking people to complete to fill in the form. So during the demo we're going to show how to create an online form, and there's really three different ways to do it. You can create an online form from scratch, and you would do that if you have no other forms in your site, and if the form that you're creating doesn't have another example out on another MB Sports Web site, or maybe you just haven't found one. But in either case, if you want to build a form from scratch, that's what we'll cover. We can also show how to copy from another form in your own site. So if you've got a version of your form from the previous season, or if you've got a form that you just like to use as a base template for all the forms, then you can certainly copy that very easily within your own site. And lastly, we'll show how to create a form using a script. And you can do this principally for copying forms from another site altogether. So if you see an example of a form that another association using MB Sports Web has on their site, you can type a special command into the address of that form on a different site, and that will give you the script that would be used to create that form on your own site. That third option, using a script, does take a little bit of technical skill, but hopefully we can demonstrate how to do it and make it easy as possible for people to go ahead and accomplish. So we're logged into the control panel of the MB Sports Web demo site. I am logged in as an administrator, but all that would be needed to create online forms is site level or organization site level at webmaster to create online forms. So within the Manage Site Content module, I've gone into Advanced Features and then Online Forms and then View Lists / Add New. So we already have 3 forms in this site, but to create a new form, we just click the Add Form button, and this screen asks us if we want to copy from an existing form, and we'll cover that in a second, so I won't do that now. But it's asking us for a title of the form, which we can call whatever we want. In this case, we're going to call this the volunteer application form. The notification emails allow you to send the submissions of this form to one or more email addresses that you provide. So for example, if this is a coaching application form and you have a coach selection committee who would be receiving the coach submissions, and you don't want to have to provide them access to the back end of the website, and also you don't want to have to periodically send them the results of the submissions, you can automatically email the coach selection committee just by entering their email addresses here, and as soon as the forms are submitted they will have a copy of all of the actual submission data. There's a box for the limit. Now we're going to cover the limit in more detail later on. And also the date ranges, which allow you to specify the specific dates that this form can be submitted, and the date ranges are optional. The instructions for this form would show up at the top of the page for the person completing the form. And the last option is payment provider, which we will also cover off in a future video. So we're just going to give this thing a name for now and click insert. And once I've added the form, on the left hand side underneath online forms, this manage forms area will show me all of the forms which are current in a list. Now we automatically archive old forms so that you have them available, but we do archive them just to kind of keep them out of the way for you. So on the volunteer application form, it shows up blank because we have not added any sections or questions or acknowledgments to it at this point. We do automatically add a human validation mechanism on every online form, which prevents robots or prevents non-human submissions of your form. Now, because we didn't put any instructions in, this text appears at the top where it says no instructions have been entered. If we were to view the form live, that would not show up. So the first thing we're going to do is add a question to the form. So quickly add question button. On the question form, we actually have the opportunity to copy questions from a different form, or copy it from the same form, or to do what we need to do to copy individual questions from different forms. But to create a question from scratch, it's going to ask us which section to put the question into, and because we have not set up any question or any sections, there are none available here. The question type is really the answer type that you're looking for. So the default is a text box, which allows basically anything to be typed into it. But you can also choose to have a text box that only allows numbers. You can have a slider control, which allows you to or allows the user to use a slider to indicate a range or a number. You can use a rating control, which would just put a bunch of stars on the page. All of these different question types have descriptions as far as what they do and what they typically will be used for. One in particular that we'll want to point out is this auto reply email address. So if you're asking for the email address of the person submitting the form and you would like them to receive a copy of their submission after they've filled in the form, then you're going to want to use the auto reply email address. Now there is another option down further called the special text box email address. This also will accept an email address and will verify that the person who fills in that question has submitted an actual or a valid email address. But the submissions in this case will not be sent to that address. So please be sure that if you do want people to receive a copy of their own submission, which in most cases would be what you want, you're going to use the auto reply email address option. Now with some of these question types, for example, maybe the date picker, once you select that option, there are additional configurations that you can apply for this question type. So in the case of a date picker, you can specify a minimum date and a maximum date which would be valid for people to submit. So if this is a registration form and you're asking people to submit the birth date of the player, you could set these min and max dates so that people wouldn't accidentally put in the birth date in the current year, which would imply that they're only a few months old. This would enforce them to have a minimum birth year and a maximum birth year, which are legitimately players who would be old enough to play or participate in your program. Different question types will have different options. So the auto reply email address doesn't have any options, but the text box to allow any input, which is the default. This does allow you to specify whether or not it's a single line of text or if it's going to be multiple lines. So if you want people to submit a short essay or even a long essay, you can specify how you want that text box to look, and then on top of that you can provide a maximum length for how many characters they can enter. Again, this just helps to prevent people from putting the wrong information into the wrong question. So if you're asking for somebody's first name, you might want to limit the length of the answer to 20 or 30 characters, which should cover off the length of virtually every name out there. The question text is what's going to appear beside the box. So if you're asking for somebody's name, you can say full name or just name or whatever you want to ask. And then this tip instructions will show up below the box that is shown on the form. So if you're asking for somebody's full name and that's not obvious enough, then you can add additional tips to say, please enter your full name, and that will also show up on that question. The sort order for each question will determine the order that they appear on the form. Now if you're using sections, then that sort order is relative to other questions within that same section. If you don't have sections, then the sort order is relative to all the questions that are on the form. You can actually have a combination of questions which are in sections and questions that are outside of sections, in which case the sort order would apply to the questions that are outside of the sections as well as the sections themselves, because the sections will have sort orders. And then for each question you can determine whether or not that question is required. So go ahead and insert and close this to have our full name question. Go ahead and add another question. And this one we're going to use the radio button, select from list, drop down, select from list, or checkboxes, multi-select from list. These all provide similar options where you're going to specify the answers for people and they're going to choose one or choose more than one in the case of checkboxes. The number of options that you have would determine the best use. Sometimes you're going to want to use a drop down if you have a lot of options. If it's simply a yes or no, then usually you're going to want to use radio buttons. So we'll go ahead and choose that. And once we've chosen a question type which has predetermined responses, then this response options tab becomes available. If we choose that response options, it'll say that we got to have a question. So we'll say, please, or actually we'll do gender. And on the response options, we can have a sort order of 1 for the first one. We can say female. And the value is what gets stored in the database, and the text is what gets shown to the end user. So you do need both the text and the value. The value can be whatever you want it to be. So in the case of this one, we will say the value of female is F and the text is female. So we'll choose add update option to add that option to the list. And then we'll choose male, add that option as well. And now we have our two options. So if we insert and close that, we should now see that we have our full name and our gender question. Now if we wanted to add a section and rearrange this, we can certainly do that. So if we click add section, then we can call this a section, and maybe we want that to show up first. And we can have individual instructions for each section. So the instructions for the form show up at the top. Each section will then be shown on the page, and you can have sub instructions located within each section if you'd like. So now we have our section, and we can take these questions now, and editing a question is simply is the same as every other part of the control panel, where it highlights in yellow. Just double click on that question. It'll ask you then what section, so we can move it into the section, and we'll have this showing up first, and now we'll make it required. And now that's going to show in that section area. And we can do the same thing for the gender question. We'll make that required show up second within our section, and it would then just move around as we've declared it. Also show the acknowledgements. So the acknowledgement box has the large area where you can put whatever you want to put into here, and the checkbox part. So if we want to put in whatever as the terms and conditions, and then the checkbox text, maybe we'll leave it as a default to agree to the terms and conditions. You can also indicate whether or not it's required to get a response back from this. And we have this as a sort order of 2, so it would show up below our section, and add that. So now we have our little blah blah blah, and then somebody is agreeing to the terms and conditions of that. If we want to just put additional instructions, maybe we'll make the sort order of 0 so it shows up first. Now if we remove the checkbox text, whatever we type up here will show up as the acknowledgement. However, because there's no checkbox text, there won't be a checkbox for somebody to actually click on to indicate that they have agreed or they accept the terms or whatever this is. So it's just a way of adding additional instructions. This can also be very useful for linking to other documents. So if it's a coaching application and you've got a code of conduct for the coaches that they need to understand, then perhaps you want to provide a link to the code of conduct within the acknowledgement section and a checkbox that says I have agreed or I have read this section. So that's basically filling the form from scratch. Now what I'm going to do is show the third option at this point, because I'm going to borrow the volunteer application form from the Waterloo Minor Hockey site. So I'm going to delete everything that's in here. So we notice in the toolbar right now we have edit form, add section, add question, add acknowledgement, and view responses. As we're deleting the questions out of this form and deleting the sections, once we're down to a blank form again, the view responses has changed with the button that says use script. So if you click this button, it's looking for a form script. It doesn't really give a whole lot of instructions, it's just looking for you to enter a script into the box. So to get that script, we go to an existing form anywhere on any MB Sports website and go to the actual form page. Now the forms will have an address of whatever their domain name is, /forms/ the ID of the form, and then the name of the form. So whatever the address is that you're on, all you need to do is add question mark get script equals true, and this will give you a text file which you can then open to have a look at. So this text file opens in Notepad, and this is a little cryptic, but this is the script that we need to use to recreate this form back on our own site. So all we need to do is copy it. We can do that by going Control A to select all text, Control C to copy, and then go back to our site and paste it using Control V and update. And this will rebuild the questions exactly as they existed on the other website. At this point, we can now take these questions, double click on them, and edit those questions to fulfill our own needs. So that's the copying from a separate website using the script function. Now the second option for creating a new form was to copy from one in your own site. So to do that, we go back to View List, Add New. If we're going to add a form, we'll call this Tryout Registration this season. And instead of choosing to start from a blank form, we're going to copy from the other tryout registration form that already exists. So we'll go ahead and insert. And now we have a tryout registrations this season. And under Manage Forms, if we view the tryout registrations from this season, we have that form already built up exactly as it was on the previous version of that form in our own site. We can then take that form and modify it as needed for this current version of that form.